Hello, my name is Odell, and during what was supposed to be a peaceful family vacation, my parents asked the waiter to seat me, alone. No explanation, no apology, just a quiet rejection dressed up as tradition. But that wasn't the worst part. They used my money, my name, my silence. They smiled while erasing me, photo by photo, dollar by dollar. And when I finally walked away, it wasn't out of anger. It was because I'd seen the truth, and I was done pretending I didn't. What kind of family does that to one of their own? And why did it take me this long to fight back? We arrived in Palm Beach just before sunset. The resort was polished, too polished, manicured lawns, high-end tennis courts, glass lobby doors so clean they disappeared. I remember rolling my suitcase past the fountain while Celia barked some instructions about spa schedules and dinner reservations. My mother, Verlaine, barely glanced up from her phone. My father, Thorne, gave the bellhop a stiff nod like a man doing business, not starting a family vacation. It was the kind of place where everything looked perfect, even when it wasn't. I kept telling myself this was a good idea, a chance to soften things, maybe reset the dynamic. I'd taken the week off, booked my own return flight, and tried, for once, to believe Celia when she said this wasn't a setup. "It'll be nice," she told me last week. "Let's just act like family." But then again, my sister had a talent for rewriting history. In her version, things were always civil, just misunderstood, just miscommunicated. It was always my fault for taking things the wrong way. That night, we went down to the restaurant together. The place had a stunning open-air layout, soft jazz playing, golden light over white linen tables, couples laughing over glasses of Chardonnay. For a moment, I forgot what it felt like to be on edge. Then we got to the table, a long one, 12 seats. My name wasn't on any place card. As I reached to sit beside my father, Verlaine held out a manicured hand and said without missing a beat, "Oh no, that's not right. She has her own seat, over there." She didn't point. She didn't need to. I looked. A single round table a few feet away, set for one. Same linens, same silverware. But off to the side, almost near the potted plant by the window, like a mistake no one wanted to fix. I blinked, thinking maybe she was joking. Maybe this was part of some big, awkward icebreaker. But Celia just adjusted her napkin and kept chatting with Thorne about golf tees. No one looked at me. I walked over and sat down alone. The waiter came. I ordered water. They laughed at something I didn't hear. For the first 20 minutes, I tried to eat slowly, hoping someone, anyone, would pull me over, ask me to join, even acknowledge I existed, but nothing came, and the silence from my father's side of the table was the sharpest. Halfway through the meal, Verlaine stood up to give a toast. "To my children," she smiled, raising her glass. "Celia, our rising star, and Olivia?" Celia's lips tightened. "Odell," I corrected quietly into my glass. Verlaine blinked, then laughed a little too brightly. "Right, Odell. Sorry, dear, just a slip." Nobody said a word, not even Thorne. I swallowed my wine without tasting it. That misnaming, that moment should have been tiny, but it hit like a slap, like I wasn't even worthy of my own name in their mouths. Later that evening, after I managed to excuse myself with a smile that hurt to wear, I went back to my room and sat by the window. The sky had darkened into navy blue. I could see the reflection of pool lights dancing across the glass. I thought about other trips, Christmases, Thanksgivings, the beach house in Tybee when I was 9. I was always the one behind the camera. "Odie, take the picture," they'd say. "You're so good with angles." But they never asked me to be in it. Maybe they didn't even know they were erasing me. Maybe they did. This time, though, it wasn't subtle. This wasn't a forgotten invitation or a quiet insult disguised as concern. This was deliberate. A separate seat, a different table, a different name. And the worst part? They all went along with it like it was normal. But I wasn't 9 anymore. I wasn't their little shadow following behind with a camera or a coffee tray. I stared at that chair in my memory, off to the side, slightly crooked, like it didn't belong in the room. No, I didn't belong in the room. They wanted me to sit separately. They wanted me invisible. But something in me, it cracked that night. Not with anger, not with tears, but with this cold, sharp realization that I had been trying to prove my place in a family that had already decided I wasn't part of it. They could toast Celia all they wanted, but they were going to learn something. I don't disappear on command anymore. Not this time. Not ever again. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because of noise or discomfort. The resort was pristine, too quiet even, but because silence wasn't silence anymore. It was a mirror, and I was finally looking into it. By the time the first light crept in through the blinds, I had already been staring at the ceiling for what felt like hours. I kept expecting a knock, a buzz, something. Maybe Celia would text me, ask if I wanted to meet early for coffee, or if I was up for a beach walk before the family breakfast. But the screen stayed dark. At 7:30, I gave up. I slipped into a loose sweater, pulled my hair into a bun, and made my way downstairs, trying to look casual, like I wasn't holding on to a frayed string of hope, like I hadn't practiced what I'd say if they greeted me with open arms and an apology. Even a small one would have done. The lounge was already half full. I scanned the room. There they were, Verlaine, Thorne, and Celia, seated near the large windows that overlooked the courtyard. Their plates were already half empty. Laughter floated above the clinks of cutlery. No empty chair, no text, no glance in my direction. I walked up slowly. Celia caught sight of me first and immediately turned her head back to her coffee. Verlaine lifted her gaze just long enough to say, "We assumed you'd figure it out." That was it. 5 words, meant to sound reasonable, but I could feel the weight beneath them. I wasn't forgotten. I was left out, intentionally. "Of course," I said quietly, nodding. "Wouldn't want to disturb the seating arrangement." I turned and walked away. My legs moved without needing instruction. I passed the check-in desk, trying to remember why I had thought this trip could be different. As I made my way through the hallway toward the elevator, a young concierge stepped into my path with a polite smile. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, voice kind. "Are you with the Marrow family? One of their guests?" I stopped, just for a second, then I smiled, tight, controlled. "I'm actually the one who booked everything for them." His face shifted, embarrassed, then confused. "Oh, of course, my apologies." I walked past him before he could say anything else. By the time I returned to my suite, my fingers were trembling, but not from sadness, from something sharper. I sat down at the small table near the window, pulled out my phone, and opened the reservation app. Every room, every dinner slot, the private car rental, spa appointments, all linked to one name. Mine. Every detail was booked under my account. Every payment came from my card. I covered the cost of this entire trip, but no one said thank you. No one even acknowledged it. Not once had they mentioned my effort, or the days I spent comparing reviews and calling staff. No one asked how I'd managed to secure the waterfront dinner on such short notice, or thanked me for handling the upgrades. I wasn't their guest. I was their ghost. Useful, but unseen. I put the phone down and stared at it. My chest wasn't heaving. My eyes didn't burn. There were no tears, just stillness. The kind that settles right before something breaks. How long had I let this happen? How many years had I played the helpful daughter, the quiet one, the one who didn't need thanks or recognition? I'd made myself small, so small, hoping they'd finally make room for me. But they never would. Not because there wasn't space, but because my absence was more convenient. A notification buzzed, a promotional email from the hotel about beachside yoga and midweek wine tastings. I didn't open it. Instead, I stared out the window again, watched a couple walking hand in hand toward the pool, laughing. A father spinning his daughter gently in a sundress. I used to think all families had complicated dynamics, that some just took longer to understand each other. But this wasn't misunderstanding. It was strategy. And if they were going to pretend I wasn't there? Good. I could be even better at disappearing. I didn't pack a bag or call a cab. I didn't even slam a door, though I imagined it. Instead, I grabbed my keycard and slipped on my sandals. The air outside was warm with salt and the muted hum of other people's vacations. Laughter here didn't belong to me, and maybe it never had. I walked aimlessly through the west wing of the resort, the quieter side, until I noticed a hallway I hadn't wandered into yet. A long corridor, soft lit, its walls lined with framed photos and gold plaques. At first, I thought they were resort memorabilia, maybe pictures of past guests or events. But the closer I stepped, the more familiar the faces became. Celia's engagement party, our parents' vow renewal, a baby shower for one of Celia's friends, all displayed like a curated museum of belonging. I scanned each photo, searching instinctively. In the early ones, I was there, off to the side, holding a gift, handing someone a drink. Always mid-motion, never centered. But then the pattern shifted. The newer photos, I was gone. One frame caught my eye. It was a brunch we had years ago at a vineyard in Georgia. I remembered standing to the far right, one hand on my glass of Prosecco, laughing with half my mouth open. But in this print, the right edge was cropped tight, right where I used to be. Another frame showed our family's 4th of July barbecue, Celia at the grill, Mom waving a flag, Dad sipping beer. I remembered standing in front of the cooler, sunglasses askew. Now, that space had been replaced with a potted fern. I paused at one particular photo, a formal portrait, clearly recent. Everyone dressed in shades of navy and cream, the resort seal behind them in gold. It had been taken just before this trip. A small plaque beneath it read, "The Marrow Legacy." I had been in that photo. I remembered the awkward angle I stood at, the half smile I wore. I even remembered brushing sand off my dress before the shot. But now, I wasn't there. They hadn't just used a better version. They had printed a new version entirely. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Instead, a strange stillness washed over me, like standing in a museum of a life I wasn't allowed to live in. I stepped closer. My reflection hovered faintly over the glass, transparent, barely there. I looked like a ghost floating behind a family that had decided they were better off without me. A woman from housekeeping passed quietly behind me. She smiled politely and moved along. I didn't return the smile. My face was frozen, eyes locked on the image behind glass. It wasn't just a photo, it was a verdict. I went back to my suite without speaking to anyone. The click of the door behind me felt final, not dramatic, just definite. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my suitcase. Then I stood up and opened it. Piece by piece, I pulled out everything I brought: receipts, itinerary printouts, the spiral notebook I used to organize the trip. I laid it all out on the desk in neat rows. I opened my laptop, pulled up the shared calendar. Every reservation, time-stamped, every booking, under my name, every cost, charged to my card. I opened a blank spreadsheet and started logging details: restaurant deposits, room numbers, confirmation codes. I wasn't trying to build a case. I was building a record. A ledger of what I'd given, not out of spite, out of clarity. If they wanted to cut me out of the narrative, they could. But I'd make sure they never erased the evidence. Not for them, for me. I wasn't angry, not exactly. Anger was loud. This was quieter, like a tide pulling back before a storm. I paused only once, glancing toward the glass balcony door where the sunlight spilled across the floor. Then I went back to typing. They didn't need to exile me. I would leave on my own terms. And this time, I'd pack more than a suitcase. I'd take back my voice. If they were going to crop me out, I'd do them one better. I'd remove myself entirely. The resort had quieted since midday, families retreating indoors, the sun mellowing to a soft golden haze. I wasn't walking anywhere in particular at first, just moving. But as I neared the spa corridor, I remembered I had a facial appointment I'd never use, so I figured I'd cancel it myself. The back hallway to the spa was lined with potted orchids and faded brochures in a wall rack. I passed the linen carts parked along the corridor when something made me stop. Voices, familiar ones. They were coming from around the service corner. I wouldn't have paused if it were just chatter, but it wasn't. It was Celia and Verlaine. "Just keep her out of the major pictures," my mother was saying in that effortless, brittle tone she reserved for talking to strangers, or her youngest daughter. "I don't want donors confused." Celia's laugh followed, sharp and shallow. "Don't worry. By the time this is published, no one will even notice she was here." The words didn't come like a slap. They came like a still blade. Cold, precise, meant to land beneath the ribs. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. My sandals stuck to the tile like they'd fused there. They didn't know I was 5 feet away. They didn't care. I backed away, slowly. By the time I made it back to the main hallway, I wasn't trembling. I wasn't crying. I was calculating. I ducked into the resort cafe, sat at the farthest booth I could find, and ordered a small coffee, just something to keep me sitting without looking suspicious. The server dropped it off with a smile I couldn't return. I opened my phone, intending to double-check the spa cancellation. Instead, I tapped the wrong thread. It was a message chain I'd never meant to see. My name wasn't even listed in it, just Client Odell. But the message came from Celia's assistant. I recognized her email tag. Per Clause 2, Client Odell's name must be removed from the estate banner and excluded from all marketing material. Keep billing her account as scheduled. I blinked. Read it again. Clause 2? I scrolled upward. There was more. An older message with digital receipts, another referencing a legal draft, then a forwarded note from someone in the estate planning department thanking Celia for the revisions. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a contract. I could have dropped the phone right there if my fingers hadn't locked. I took a sip of lukewarm coffee to steady myself, but it only made my throat tighter. They had planned this. They had set my name up to disappear, on paper, on banners, in memories, and still expected me to pay for the honor. I didn't storm out. I didn't cause a scene. Instead, I stood, tipped the server well, walked out of the cafe like I hadn't just read a blueprint for my erasure. Back in my suite, the room felt colder than it had before. I turned off the lights, let the pale blue from the balcony leak in. I sat at the desk, opened my laptop. This time, I didn't just pull up confirmation codes. I opened a blank document and began to write. All rooms under my card. Group photos replaced. Financial clauses edited. Conversations caught confirming intent. I named the file, just in case. Then I backed it up twice. They wanted to remove me from their story? Fine, but I'd hold the receipts. I sat still for a long time, watching the sky dim outside. A family below laughed from the pool deck, and it sounded like a language I no longer spoke. They wanted me gone so badly. Maybe it's time I vanish in a way they'd never forget. That night I didn't sleep. I scrolled through contracts, receipts, photo metadata, until I found something I hadn't seen before. And it changed everything. The next morning, I didn't wait for them to set the tone. I was up before the first breakfast tray rolled down the hallway, dressed and walking with purpose. No more hiding behind politeness. No more hoping they'd wake up and see me. The resort courtyard was already buzzing. Staff prepping tables, early guests sipping orange juice beneath white umbrellas. I spotted Celia by the koi pond, checking her phone with one hand and gesturing at something with the other. I crossed the space between us like a current. No pause, no second guess. Morning, I said flatly. She barely looked up. Oh, you're up early. I thought I'd save you the trouble of pretending. Her brows arched, but I didn't wait. I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshot of her assistant's message, and handed it to her. She didn't take it. I don't know what this is, she said with that perfectly rehearsed frown she used on board members and bad lighting. I held it up between us. You don't have to, I said, voice level. But I do, and now others will too. Odell? No, I cut in. If you wanted me out, you should have just said it. But no, you want me present enough to foot the bill, just not enough to be in the picture. You want me erased quietly, efficiently, but still useful. Her eyes darted toward a nearby server, always aware of optics. Look, you're overreacting, I laughed. One sharp breath. No, you picked the wrong one this time. She opened her mouth again, but I'd already turned and walked away. By mid-afternoon, the event center buzzed with clinking glasses and faux sentiment. A stack of custom gift bags sat at the entrance, each tagged with gold foil. I accepted mine and sat at the back, unnoticed. Inside the gift bag was a linen-bound book, The Marrow Legacy Celebration. The kind of keepsake designed to flatter donors and look good on coffee tables. I flipped it open. There she was, Celia. Full-page photo, centerfold spread, a glowing dedication praising her for organizing the weekend, her vision and generosity, her unwavering commitment to family history. My stomach knotted, but I kept turning pages. Toward the back, something stuck out. An invoice, folded neatly, addressed to me, not Celia, me. Twist the knife and then send the bill. I stood up and stepped outside before the nausea reached my throat. The air was thick with humidity. A group of guests nearby toasted with champagne. Someone called my name, but I didn't turn. Back near the fountain, Celia caught up with me, her voice syrupy. "Oh, come on, it was just a detail." "A detail?" She smirked. "We gave you something to do so you'd feel included. That's gratitude, Odellin." I didn't slap her, I didn't scream. I just looked at her and said, "This isn't over." Later that evening, after the celebration dinner died down and the crowd thinned out, I walked down toward the palm grove by the edge of the resort. Dad was sitting on a stone bench, looking out at the water. Alone. Quiet. Typical. I didn't sit. I stood beside him, close enough that the silence didn't feel like a wall. "I'm not here to ask you to pick sides," I said. He looked up slowly, adjusted his glasses, didn't speak. "But if you stay silent after this, that is a side." He blinked, eyes tired. "Your mother thinks—" I shook my head. "This isn't about what she thinks. It's about what's right." A pause stretched between us, heavy, but necessary. "This is the last time," I said quietly. "The last time I let any of you tell me who I am." And I meant it. Back in my room, I updated the file on my laptop. Added timestamps, photos, screenshots, clicked save, clicked again. Just in case, now had a second folder. Ready when needed. I wasn't done. If silence was their weapon, then mine would be proof. The resort faded behind me as the shuttle pulled away, but before we reached the main road, I got a call from someone I hadn't expected, and it changed everything. By first light, I was already on the road. The horizon was smeared in a soft gold haze as I pulled away from the resort. No goodbyes, no glances back, just the clean hum of the tires beneath me and the sound of resolve taking form in my chest. I didn't head home. I drove 45 minutes north into the heart of West Palm Beach to a small law office tucked above a bakery. It had no flashy signage, no polished marble lobby, just a name on frosted glass and a woman behind the front desk who smiled like she already knew why I was there. "Odell and Marrow?" the attorney greeted, stepping out with a firm handshake and direct eyes. I nodded and followed her in. Her office smelled like leather and coffee. I slid the folder across the desk, hard copies of everything, booking receipts, red-lined contract screenshots, the assistant's message, timestamps from the photos. I added a thumb drive too, just in case. She took her time flipping through it all, didn't say much. Her silence felt surgical. After several minutes, she leaned back, laced her fingers together. "You've got enough to make it hurt," she said. "Now the question is, do you want to pull the trigger now, or wait until they think you've let it go?" I didn't answer, not yet, but the fire in my chest told me I was close. On the drive back, I didn't return straight to the resort. I pulled into a parking lot a block away and sat in the car, logging into the booking app. Every room was under my corporate account. The suites, the spa packages, the transportation, every dinner reservation, every late checkout. They'd gotten so used to the convenience of my card, they didn't even bother hiding it anymore. I started with the easy things, canceled the poolside massage for the next day, then the yacht lunch Celia had scheduled with her donors. Then I went further. I canceled the resort's private car rental and redirected the airport shuttle to pick me up alone. No calls, no warning, just actions. Inside the resort, the staff began receiving cancellation notifications one by one. I knew it would cause a quiet storm by the time brunch rolled around. I packed with precision, not in a rush, but with intention. I left the welcome gift bag on the bed and took only what was mine. No notes, no theatrics. Then my phone buzzed. It was a forwarded message from someone at the resort's guest services desk, a quiet young woman I'd spoken to once by the elevator, who'd noticed me sitting alone at every event. She didn't say much then, but something about her eyes told me she saw everything. The message was a group thread between Verlaine, Celia, and my father. A photo of the event banner, close-up. My original signature, once printed on the sponsor acknowledgement, had been digitally removed. Below it, a comment from Celia. She's just the one who writes the checks. Verlaine replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Thorne, of course, said nothing. I stared at the message. For a moment, I didn't move. Then I opened my email and began typing. Subject, formal dispute notification. To Marrow Family Trust Committee, Event Coordination Team, Resort Accounting. Attachments. Itemized list of all transactions under Odell and Marrow's name, financial receipts, screenshots of correspondence. Body, per attached documentation, I hereby dispute all charges incurred under my account relating to the Marrow Legacy event. No authorization was granted for branding alterations or use of personal funds for promotional materials under another name. Effective immediately, all pending transactions are to be halted and further use of my account is prohibited. Final line, the one who writes the checks has stopped writing them. I hit send. Then I stood, slipped my phone into my bag, and walked to the lobby without flinching. Celia was seated near the concierge, laughing into her coffee with Verlaine. Their voices stopped the moment I passed. Neither said a word. I didn't either. They wanted control. They forgot who held the receipts. I didn't look back as I stepped out of the resort lobby. My heels clicked softly against the tile, but in my mind, they echoed louder than anything my family had said to me this entire week. By mid-morning, I was on the road heading north, the rental's AC humming steady while I rehearsed what I needed to say. Charleston was only a few hours away, but emotionally, it felt like crossing into another life. I'd booked a meeting room at a boutique law firm downtown, neutral ground, quiet, professional, a place where emotion didn't cloud facts. The receptionist offered me water and showed me to the glass-walled room. 10 minutes later, Halden entered. Gray suit, glasses low on his nose, eyes that said he'd seen worse. I didn't wait for pleasantries. I need a forensic audit on a trust I partially funded, but was never allowed to review, I said. I have proof of withheld documents, altered charges, and unauthorized usage of my name and money. I slid the folders across the table. My printed documentation, labeled and dated, invoices, booking confirmations, screenshots, the photo banner edit, Celia's assistant's message, all of it. He didn't blink, just flipped through page by page. After 10 minutes, he closed the folder. Do you want to pull the trigger now or wait until they think they're safe? I looked him in the eye. Now. But I want it clean. He nodded. We'll start with preservation letters to prevent further asset movement. From there, injunctions, fraud filings, and press hold if necessary. Halden left to begin drafting. I stood for a while, watching the traffic slide by below the window. Charleston felt calm, anchored. It was a strange contrast to the rising fire in my chest. Maybe that's why I chose this city. By the time I checked into my hotel a few blocks away, I'd already canceled every reservation still lingering on my name through the resort app. No more champagne spa add-ons. No sunset boat cruise. No executive car rental for the farewell brunch. All gone. One click at a time, I made the floor under their carefully coordinated celebrations start to shift. A ripple, subtle at first, but they'd feel it, especially when they realized the airport shuttle for the final day. I'd canceled that too. Let them scramble. I changed clothes, jeans, blazer, low heels, and grabbed a tea from the cafe near the lobby. My phone buzzed once as I walked back up the hallway. It was a text forwarded from someone on the resort staff I'd tipped earlier in the week. I hadn't asked for anything. Apparently, I didn't have to. It was a screenshot of a group chat, Verlaine, Celia, and Thorne. They'd been mocking me again. The message read, "We swapped her name out on the final poster. No way we're crediting her in front of the Savannah folks. She's just the one who writes the checks." The attached photo? A banner. Marrow Legacy Weekend, powered by Celia Marrow. Where my name used to be, no surprise, just confirmation. I didn't call, I didn't shout. Instead, I drafted one last email and attached a formal notification to the Trust's administrative board, raising concerns, requesting clarification about amended property holdings, and referencing donor transparency. I CC'd the Savannah Heritage Council. I didn't accuse, not yet, but the tremor had started, and when I finally turned my phone off, I knew the silence would make it louder. They used my signature to get through doors, used my savings to build a story that pushed me out. And now, They were counting on my silence to keep it standing. But I was no longer interested in standing still. I packed my laptop into its sleeve, tucked everything neatly into my leather tote, and pulled the hotel curtain open just enough to let in the pale evening light. They wanted me cropped out. Fine. Let's see what happens when I pull the whole frame down. The sky outside my hotel room had darkened into a soft bluish gray when the knock came. Not timid, not urgent, just intentional. I opened the door to find Lark. She looked older than I remembered, gray streaks in her once black hair, the lines on her face deeper, but her eyes held the same sharpness. That same fire I once thought was stubbornness. Now, I saw it for what it was. Survival. "You have a minute?" she asked, holding up a manila envelope like it weighed more than just paper. I stepped aside. No hug, no small talk. We'd gone too long for that to feel natural. She sat on the edge of the chair by the window, setting the envelope on the table like it was fragile. "I wasn't going to come. Thought maybe I'd just let them hang themselves. But then I heard you were here. Alone." "I'm fine," I said, not entirely sure it was true. "No, you're not," she replied, eyes never leaving mine. "And that's why I'm here." She opened the envelope and slid out a stack of neatly organized papers. Letters, meeting notes, financial reports, some with her own handwritten comments in the margins. "They did the same to your mother," she said quietly. Started small, changing how things were worded, leaving her name off of invites, saying it was just a mistake. Then one day, her name wasn't on the trust. She didn't sign it either. My chest tightened. She never fought it. Said it wasn't worth the family being torn apart. And then she got sick, and they let her die thinking silence was grace. She reached into her bag again and pulled out a small USB drive. "I didn't stay quiet. I just didn't know what to do with this until now." When she left, she didn't linger, just a quick, "You deserve the whole picture," and a nod before the door shut behind her. I stared at that flash drive for a long time before I finally slid it into my laptop. A single file sat inside, labeled with a date just 3 months ago. I hit play. Celia's voice came first. "She's not like us. She doesn't know how to play this game." Then Verlaine. "Let her keep funding things if she wants. She fades into the background better that way." They laughed. I didn't. I played it again. Once for memory, once for certainty. Then I copied the file into 2 cloud backups and attached it in an email to Halden with the subject line, "Statement of Patterned Erasure." I wrote nothing else. The next morning, I reserved the small meeting space in the Charleston Inn, just down the hall from the bar where they'd toasted to my absence a few years back. Then I sent 3 messages. To Verlaine, to Celia, to Thorne. "Please attend. This concerns legacy and liability." I arrived first. Lark followed 10 minutes later, nodding silently as she sat beside me. She wore black slacks and a beige blouse. Nothing flashy, just ready. At 10:06, they walked in. Verlaine's eyes scanned the room like she couldn't believe we had the gall to summon her. Celia looked annoyed. Thorne just looked tired. "Is this necessary?" Verlaine said. I reached into my folder, pulled out the audio transcript and pressed play on my phone. The room stilled. I didn't look at them. I looked at the notepad in front of me. When the clip ended, I slid forward a printed copy of the trust documents, highlighted and time-stamped. Then the forensic comparison Halden sent me that morning, showing my signature replicated from an old contract and digitally pasted. "You wanted me gone," I said, voice even. "Now I'm giving you exactly that. But I'm taking the truth with me." Verlaine opened her mouth. I raised my hand, palm out. "No, this isn't a conversation. This is documentation." Celia let out a breath like a scoff, but even she didn't speak. "I don't want the estate. I don't want the name. I don't want anything that ties me to this anymore." I stood. "This isn't revenge. It's just the record finally catching up to the lies." Lark rose beside me. Verlaine blinked, speechless. Thorne never moved. I walked to the door, hand on the knob, then paused. "You can keep the family name," I said without turning around. "I'll build something worth remembering instead." A week after walking out of that conference room, I found myself sitting across from Halden again, this time in his sunlit office in Charleston. The walls were lined with quiet art, pieces that didn't scream wealth or pedigree, just presence. That was the kind of space I wanted to be in now. Nothing flashy, nothing hollow. He pushed the final settlement paperwork toward me. The legal release from the Marrow Trust. The formal disconnection from the estate. I picked up the pen, paused briefly, then signed. It was anticlimactic. No fireworks, no breathless victory. Just a line of ink that drew a boundary I'd never let them cross again. Halden leaned back in his chair. You still have a strong case if you want to pursue additional damages. Fraud, defamation. There's plenty to go after. I looked at him. They've already lost something they can't replace. That's more than enough. He nodded, not arguing. Outside, the weather had turned warm. I stepped onto the sidewalk with a different kind of quiet around me. Not the silence that used to erase me, but one I'd chosen for myself. Later that evening, over chamomile tea in the little inn I'd moved to temporarily, I opened my email. One unread message caught my eye, sent from someone I didn't recognize. Subject, thank you. It was from a staff member tied to the Marrow Foundation project. I clicked. I just wanted to say, thank you for telling the truth. I thought I was going crazy. There was no signature, just that one sentence. I didn't respond. I didn't forward it to Halden or Lark. I just closed my laptop and smiled for the first time in weeks. Not out of satisfaction, but because something inside had shifted for good. Back in Savannah the following week, I picked up the keys to a small studio off Whitaker Street. Nothing glamorous, bare walls, scuffed floorboards, and a leaky faucet in the corner sink. But it was mine. I painted the walls myself, built the work tables, ordered a used couch online, and dragged it up the stairs solo. I was building something, not in spite of the past, but beyond it. I registered the name the day the paint dried. The Frame Project, a design co-op. A space where women like me, women who had been cut out of legacies, removed from narratives, written off, could create something of their own. A space where stories weren't rewritten, just reclaimed. On the outer wall, I commissioned a mural, just black and white. At the center, a silhouette of a woman stepping forward, one foot still half in shadow. Above her, in simple lettering, what they cut out of the picture became the whole story. I didn't tell my family about it. There was no need. Lark visits sometimes. She helps mentor some of the younger women, brings cookies that are always slightly burnt and stories that never are. As for the others, Verlaine, Celia, Thorne, I haven't heard a word. I doubt I ever will, but that's not the ending I needed. It's this. Quiet, grounded, true. Some stories don't need a reunion, just a release. And if you're still here with me, thank you. If there's one thing this journey has taught me, it's that silence isn't always noble, and walking away doesn't mean giving up. Sometimes, it's how we finally start to live. I used to think being part of a family meant staying no matter how invisible you felt, how many pieces of yourself you had to trade in. But now I know, family isn't just blood, it's who shows up, who respects your boundaries, who lets you exist without trying to rewrite your story. If you've ever felt pushed aside, like you were the one cropped out of the picture, I hope this story reminds you that you still have the frame. You can rebuild, redefine, and reclaim what was always yours to begin with, your voice. So let me ask you, have you ever had to walk away from people you once loved just to remember who you are? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story resonated with you. Or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far these stories reach. And hey, if it didn't hit home for you, that's okay too. Leave a comment and tell me why. Let's talk about it. And if you want to hear more real stories like this, stories about strength, healing, and rising from the unspoken, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. I'll be here. And maybe in some way you will be too.